Let's just wait for that to start. Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Sandy Baresi Shegota. If you attended the class Big Data, or not Big Data, sorry, Data Storage and Management, I was the lecturer there as well. And today we will discuss, we have a class discussing social aspects of artificial intelligence. The goal of this class is to basically illustrate AI, possible impacts of AI, and how we can try to address them over the instead of just focusing on engineering approaches and something like that. Because today, unless you're a hardcore engineer in AI, these are, and even if you are, these are the kind of things that you need to deal with, and you need to at the very least, it's questions that are going to get asked of you. So I will share the link to this in chat. Let me just open it. They have also sent you an email containing it. If you haven't received it, just let me know in chat later on, so I can update your email address or something in case it was wrong. Let me just find it. Okay. I copied the wrong thing. There we go. Okay, so let me just, before we start the class proper, this class, you probably noticed, only has a single lecture. That's because at the end of the class, instead of attending multiple lectures, you will have to write a short seminar. We will talk about it. So a couple of pages, nothing special, nothing extreme. You don't have to worry about, having to write 50 pages or something like that, because, discussing this. And I will say I'm primarily an engineer, but I have, when I was tasked with creating this class, I have consulted with some colleagues who are more, focused on social sciences. And with this, we have essentially concluded, they have advised me that you will learn much better if you have to, think about certain impacts of things that we will discuss here, and write about them, even just a few pages, then if you are just a lecture that about them. So we have decided to do it like this. So we'll have, today this lecture, and after that you will be tasked uh, with writing the uh, what do you call it, that seminar. Okay. So basically, this lecture today will be split in three parts. First, we will discuss possible social issues that are given here, that can exist in when we are talking about AI. Then in the second part, we will discuss how we can address them, what we need to do, what techniques exist to help us address possible issues. We will go over some infamous, let's call them examples, after that, and then we will just at the end go over these seminar details. Don't worry if you have to leave early or disconnect. I will send you an email containing this information about the seminar. That's why I'm telling you, if you haven't received an email already from me this morning, please just email me at my, I will post it in chat. So sandy.segota@ritech.uniri.hr, this email address. Just let me know that you are attending the class and you haven't received an email, just so I can include you in the mailing list for the details. Yeah, for the final details here in including the recording of this class, the materials, and this essay about what you have to include in it, etc. Okay, so let's start with the lecture proper and discuss, some possible social issues that are being caused or can be caused by AI today. Basically, some of the main issues that are commonly discussed with uh, these points are essentially, AI systems are usually used today as decision-making tools. Uh, they should be used as decision support tools. This is something that was even before AI. It was called expert system support, where basically you have someone who is an expert, but AI helps them uh, get uh, get the proper solution. So one of the examples that is very common is diagnostic support for doctors, where you can load in your X-ray or something, and AI will tell you whether there is a risk of, will classify that image as a person who, for example, has pneumonia or doesn't have pneumonia. The issue there, is that how it should be used is that the doctor should take that as one of the indicators. To be like, the AI algorithm is telling me that there could be this person could have pneumonia. If I don't think they have pneumonia, I won't put them on antibiotics or some other treatment. But even if I don't, maybe I'll check the image or I will pay better attention to this image because there are some indicators that the system that I have, whether it's AI or something else, has figured out as indicators towards this person being having a certain disease. That's what is the idea. The problem is today you have a lot of examples where AI is used essentially automatically without oversight, and instead of it being a tool that should support an expert, it's taking the role of the expert, and that's something that really isn't the main idea of how AI should function. Uh, the other problem is not directly related to AI itself, but it's again with the use and the need for AI. Basically, a lot of businesses have figured out very quickly that AI works really great, and you can increase your profit significantly. One of the famous examples is Amazon. When you go to Amazon, you have that suggestion. Other people who bought this also bought this, right? That is using AI. If you remember in your introductory classes, uh, those were the clustering techniques. I think you may have mentioned them. Those clustering techniques are used to group different groups of people who make purchases and figure out different types of customers. And this is one of the things that helped Amazon way back when they were a bookstore to essentially get better suggestions to people and sell more books. And today, just sell more things. The problem with this is that you need to collect a lot of data to train, a good, reliable, well generalizing model. You can you need to collect a lot of data, and the problem with this is that a lot of companies might decide to uh, collect data without receiving your explicit consent. What do I mean by explicit consent? All of us, when you are setting up a new phone, you get like 50 pages of things they want you to agree upon, or you don't even get 50 pages. You just get like, hey, everything is included at this link. Do you agree with it? And you just bought your new phone. You want to set it up. You can't refuse it, or you won't be able to set up your phone. So you will just click yes and go forward. And oftentimes you will have data collection. You will agree to data collection in there. There are some regulations today that push towards this data collection actually not requiring your explicit consent. That's why maybe you have seen in the later years things like specifically having to check like I consent to my data being collected, or for example the websites asking you for cookies so they can't track you as easily. Those are some of the examples, but the other problem is, mass surveillance through AI-driven technologies. We will discuss some examples where this was an actual problem, where people were accused of crimes without there is a problem in data aggregation for a training, the lack of consent that they said. You want to provide explicit consent if you're ever designing a system, or you're a part of the team that is designing an AI system. You want to provide explicit consent and let people know that their data is being used and in which way is being used. For medical data, for example, that is mandated in a lot of countries, but going forward, it will very probably be mandated in every possible data collection case. Okay. And as I said, there are problems with, when you're doing predictive analytics, you're predicting, you are basing your prediction on statistics. Not all of us, basically, we are all our own people. We don't necessarily follow what statistics are going to say about us. Not all our decisions are dictated purely by statistics, and it's not necessarily fair to use that to understand how we are going to act in the future. That's a possible point of discussion. Another problem, especially with growing natural language processing models getting better and better, and their usage growing, is something that is automation and job displacement. That's something that I am an automation engineer myself. I deal with robotics, and that's something that a question that I have dealt with for a long time. You essentially can't give an interview without being asked about. So, but what about job displacement here? You built in a robot, and now it's going to replace. Now it's going to replace uh, 15 people. So 15 people are losing their job, and the issue of this is essentially we're going to discuss later and say it, but something that I was given as an answer whenever I was asked something like that was essentially the job. When you're when you're placing a robot somewhere to do some job, it's because that job isn't good for humans. It's very repetitive. It's dangerous. It's problematic to have a human there, and it's better to have that human do a different job. The problem with that is that I am an engineer, and you're barking up the wrong tree. I'm an easy target. You should talk to a government. You should talk to this employer and basically tell them that, hey, if we are introducing AI here, you need to introduce something like upskilling or reskilling, where these people are trained to do different roles and different training. You can just focus on increasing your productivity. But sadly, until something like that is regulated, businesses won't do it. They will rather, deal with paying like a termination fee or something, and then move on. And fire people instead of dealing with reskilling them and rehiring them in different places, which is obviously a big problem, especially when we are talking about expert support systems. We're talking about lower skilled labor sectors, such as base level, like level 1 customer support, where people who work there don't necessarily have skills that can find them employment in other areas easily, right? This is further exacerbated with people who, due to their physical condition or mental condition, aren't equipped to work in physical labor, right? So, for example, if you are physically disabled, you may be able to work as a level 1 tech support, but you may not be able to go to building site and move bags around. So that's something that you hear as an argument a lot in discussions today. Is like, oh, well, if you just, if AI replaces you, and because you work as, a copywriter or a spell checker or, as a support person, just just go work at the construction site or something, and that's not something that's possible for everyone, and it's a significant issue if essentially AI encroaching into different spaces the more advanced it gets. This is something that we are also going to be discussing later on in detail with some examples, but there is a lot of the bias in training data can reinforce certain inequalities. For example, if you have training data that's not balanced, where you have a lot of people from a certain group are entering this system, are entering your data flow, your data set. The AI might learn that those people default to a positive class or something. So if you have a lot of poor people have that's a common, how can I say it, a common mistake, common logical fallacies, like poor people commit more crimes. Yes, of course, because rich people don't need to commit crimes, or they commit crimes that aren't as visible, etc. So basically, when you are collecting data, especially when that data involves people, you have to be careful to not include biases. And there are analyses here that you can perform to make sure that no matter what the variable is, to include variables as wide as possible. This is something that, if some of you are in practical data collection class, we discussed about essentially getting experts in area. In this case, it would be social sciences, and sitting down with them and being like, hey, is there a possible bias here that we are introducing that we aren't figuring out? And if they are familiar with certain groups, certain ethnical groups, etc., they may be more helpful in telling you, in identifying a bias like that. Another thing that isn't discussed yet, but that much, but it's definitely something that's happening, is unequal access to AI technologies. If the simplest example is if you have money, you can buy a better tier of ChatGPT. If you and I are both using ChatGPT to write our introductory letter for our cover letter for signing up for an employment, or our introductory letter or our essay for joining a college or a class, if I can pay $20 for tier 1 upgrade or $200 for the second tier upgrade, these are the actual prices per month, I'm going to get better results, even if I'm not using it to write an entire seminar. If I'm just using it to support because I can afford to pay more than you can, I'm going to have better results, and that is that grows even wider. With more stuff that I can afford. I can afford a better image generation tool. I can afford there are a lot of specific tools, AI tools, that because AI training is very expensive, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of storage. A lot of them are paid tools, and they may have a free tier. Some don't have a free tier, but yeah, that's something that's very, very apparent. If we are in class, we are given a seminar. I teach programming here. The difference between we are actually moving away. We are discussing how to teach programming differently, because right now, if I can afford as a student to spend, I think a Microsoft Copilot, GitHub Copilot license for programming is something like $10 a month. If I can afford that, I can solve most basic tasks that you give to someone, in programming. I can solve that, address that really, really easily. With that, while the student who doesn't have access to that isn't capable, and it might not be a great way to test knowledge, especially because it prioritizes people who can afford tools like that, and B, it doesn't actually teach anyone anything beyond using AI to solve your problem. Well, you need to have some underlying knowledge. So that's something that is being actually discussed in a lot of different areas right now. Corollary to that is, wealth concentration in AI-driven economies. The same way you have wealth concentration in areas where you can drill for crude oil. The same issue is here. Those economies who are already ahead enough that they can focus on tertiary and quaternary development, developing computer programs, AI tools. They're going to get richer and richer because AI tools are very good, and we wanted to pay for AI, especially companies. You and I, my $10 a month is going to make a difference, but a company paying a couple $100,000 for a company-wide license, that's combined, across a lot of companies, it's going to make a significant impact in economy. And again, there is, finally, someone that they said, following that bias, if you have a bias in your data, you can have, if you're doing loan approvals or hiring, we're going to see an example of that later on. You can actually have problems with your AI discarding a certain group of, for example, one example here is, if you're looking, if you're doing something like clustering or data similarity checks, and you're saying like, oh, I'm very happy with the people who are in my company now, so I'm going to do similarity check on people who I'm hiring to see what's happening, what's going on, and I want to hire people who are similar to people in my company. And if you're doing that statistically looking, you are probably going to focus on certain things like which college they finished, which school they went to, what was their previous work experience, right? You're going to isolate certain variables that you're going to look at. But if you're dealing with AI and you're just feeding a ton of data into an algorithm, you might create a certain bias. For example, if all the people you are hiring are ethnically white, and the person who is ethnically white signs up, do you know that if you fed this algorithm, or if everyone in your company right now, you have a small company, you created a startup with your friends, and all of you are male, how do you know that when you fed information to the algorithm, you didn't feed gender information inside? If you fed it, maybe the algorithm will refuse any female applicants going forward, because it's possible, because it considers that as a significant difference. Although obviously you as a person, I hope, wouldn't consider it a significant problem. That's the problem with AI algorithms, is blindly using them and accidentally creating biases in tools that you are using. Another thing is that essentially we have heard that there are fake news with the changes in media, where you want to drive clicks. Clicks get you money, and it's not like back in the day when newspapers sold anyways. Everyone bought newspapers, and so you could write about whichever example you wanted. You could write about serious stories, and you wanted to have high quality stories, so people would pick your newspaper instead of a different newspaper. Today you are mostly driven by clicks, and you want to generate more clicks. I know some people who I sometimes interview with for newspapers and stuff like that, and I know that a lot of especially privately owned uh, media today will focus on stuff that sounds bombastic, is interesting, and I had even issues in the past with journalists, because they would I would want to talk about something that's not that big of a deal, but it's maybe interesting to people who are interested in automation or robotics or AI, and they would create a full sensationalist clickbait title, so people would click on it, and then that reflects negatively on you, because one of the examples is we actually had we had a panel, right, discussing, during COVID how AI usage in COVID, how AI was used in COVID. There were different examples of actual positive usages of AI during COVID, and someone connected and started talking about ivermectin and different things for a couple of, maybe 30 seconds, and before the moderator connected and told them like, hey, this isn't the topic of the discussion. We aren't here to discuss vaccines and stuff. We are here to discuss AI in spread control, etc. And but some of the journalists who were there basically took that 30 seconds of the entire panel and said like, oh, people are talking about vaccines negatively, etc. And they didn't even focus on the discussion itself. And then we got members of the panel actually got some negative press, so to speak, because people thought that we were focusing on this in the panel instead of what we were actually focusing on. And that's getting easier and easier today with AI, because first you can analyze stuff and create a positive feedback loop where you get more clicks by using by getting more and more bombastic titles, because you're analyzing existing titles and just creating feeding them to basically generate titles and generate media. But bigger problem here is spread of misinformation through bots. It's much easier because you can target people and you can generate things basically privately. Like I can take you, if you use Twitter or X now, I can take, if I have an API access for it, I can take your tweets, see what you have, and basically create a bot that's going to agree with you on everything. And after and will generate tweets that you specifically will like, because I have information about what kind of tweets you liked, what kind of information you engage with, and I can literally on a person-to-person level generate a model that will act as a bot that you will write about topics that you like, and I can slowly and subtly influence you through using misinformation in that way, especially with deep fakes today. I can use a lot of us, especially people on the younger side, are still pretty good at recognizing deep fakes and understanding that deepfakes exist, and are good at recognizing them and figuring it out. But a lot more people understand, for example, have a perception that, oh, you can fake a photo with Photoshop, yes, but you can fake a video. It's practically impossible. Well, today you can deepfake a video relatively easily. So yeah, that's something that's a significant, problem today with deepfakes and AI generated content. As I said, content can be personalized basically to you or a group of people, and you can create, echo chambers. Basically, this automated bot that they created is going to agree with you, and because you are agreeing with it, you think it's a person who's actually tweeting. Uh, they can, slowly introduce information and misinformation to lead you to a certain way. And one of the things that is being done today is verifying AI generated content. This is done not just socially on social media and stuff, but it's also being done in different in medicine. For example, we want to generate. We want to make sure that if we are submitting a data set or collecting a data set, we want to make sure that it doesn't use synthetically generated data, it doesn't use AI generated data, because or if it does, a lot of research today, I've done a lot of research in using synthetic data to fill out information that you may not be able to collect, or to speed up data collection processes. But that's something that you want to know, that you aren't using real data, you're using synthetic data, and there are possible issues with that data. Again, I want to go into in-depth here about synthetic data generation. It's a pretty complex mathematic topic. It's not under this class, in scope of this class, but essentially yeah, it's a big problem, not just in social level, but in in actual engineering and actual data collection level, where it's much simpler for me if I'm a part of the project that says that oh, we are going to collect data for, I don't know, we want to collect data for 1,000 patients. If I'm lazy, I can collect data for 10 patients and then use AI to generate, based on that data, to generate 990 copies. Not copies, but data points that are sourced from this original 10 points. And that's very bad. It's I haven't essentially generated anything new, and I haven't used anything. I haven't contributed to the research. But at the end of the year, I can just submit and say, "Hey, I collected. I every day I collected 10 to 15 patients. I put in a lot of work." Well, in reality, I just spent one day collecting data and then generated it. And that can be, AI models based on that can then underperform on the real data because I haven't actually collected data properly or even applied that synthetic data generation properly. And yes, and it's an even bigger problem, when it comes to actual social media. How can you differentiate stuff that's AI written, AI supported, and AI actually written? One of the examples that has been proposed is like adding notes that says like this content was AI generated in part, or AI support was used in generating this content. But the problem with this is that essentially as AI gets better and better, uh, it's going to be harder and harder to tell the difference between actual AI generated data and non-AI generated data. So a lot more people will be able to purposefully slip under the radar here. We have, the influence of AI on culture, where there are a lot of discussions, especially in art circles. I have a lot of friends who are, in art, especially on paintings and sculptures and things where, especially for digital painting, a lot of artists are looking at AI as problematic. Some people are looking at it, okay, obviously, if you just generate AI completely, uh, it's a problem, but maybe you can use some AI-based tools to help you. Some people say that, oh, that's a problem, no matter what you're doing, because you're using data that's trained on other people, so you're indirectly plugging, indirectly copying their work. Then people are replying to that, well, yes, but isn't, aren't you are inspired by someone, aren't you indirectly copying their work without just an algorithm as a middleman? There's a lot of discussion going here. One of the problems is something that we call cultural homogenization, because basically all AI content that is created from a pool of things. If you don't add to that pool of things by introducing external different things, you are just recreating data that's inside, and that has a problem. The problem with that is that essentially you are inbreeding data. It's the best term that I can use, where you are using AI generated tools to AI generate images, which are then used to train that same tool, because there's no outside input, or there's very little of it, because in time it takes talented artists to draw a nice picture. It's going to take me as an AI engineer. I can generate tens of thousands of images and just plop them online somewhere. So yeah, it's when we're talking about data, AI training, model training, we're going to have that issue of yeah that issue of basically inbreeding of data and algorithms. The other problem that is related to this is essentially when you have challenges in preserving cultural diversity. What do I mean by this? Well, if we are training AI to generate images, a smaller group that has a specific, uh, for example, in music, you may have a certain ethnical groups that are small, or you may have groups that are just certain types of music that are regional or something like that. And there's not a lot of this content generated because it's regional. So if we are training the models, basically to thinking of them as something that we can use to, generate music going forward, those models are going to be biased to more popular music. For example, if you have something like pop music, it's you're going to get much more pop songs going into it than I don't know, some local Croatian music that we may have here locally, where there's like two or three different bands that are making it. So that's sort of a problem that can happen when it comes to using this diversity, and you're just basically remaking stuff that sounds similar or looks similar. And this is another issue. It's basically cross-cultural AI ethics and deployment considerations exist. Not all companies, not all people basically see AI issues in the same way. Okay, so this is something that I already mentioned, but it was something that was discussed in a lot of detail. It's basically, who does the AI produced artwork belong to? If I train a model using your art, uh, and I generate data, who does that final image belong to? Does it belongs to people who collected the data and trained the model, right? Because they put in some effort. Does it belong to me because I performed generation? Does it belong to uh, you because you're an original artist? Does it belong to all of us in different parts? This is important when you're using this commercially, or you just, some people just don't want their model to, they don't want their model to be trained on their art being used to generate other models, whether people use it for money or not. Basically, this is a big discussion today. It's very problematic, let's call it, because it's a lot of people who argue against it, against saying like, oh, well, if I'm learning to paint, I'm going to uh, learn learn on other people's examples anyways. Does that mean that everything that I create belongs to them as well because I use their pictures for inspiration? But obviously, when you're using AI, you're using those pictures for more than just inspiration, etc. So it is, a very, very big deal, and there are a lot of AI competitions, a lot of, for example, competitions online where you can enter with your artwork, and there were some that were won by AI art because people who were in charge of those competitions weren't weren't keeping track of it closely. They didn't figure out it was AI, and there was one uh, particularly interesting example where the person didn't just use Midjourney or DALL-E or something online. They actually took the DeviantArt of which is like a website where you can post your work, your artwork. They basically took all the images from a very popular author, right, in the area. That they were. It was like a fantasy competition painting. They took their pictures, that they digital art that they've drawn over the course of many years, used it in AI generation to create their own model, to basically train their own model to generate art that just from this person's pictures, because they know that, hey, this person is very popular. It was like a famous artist in this area, and they submitted basically the AI generated artwork that was created based on just their data, and the actually a lot of people thought that the artwork was actually created by the original author of those pictures, because it was so similar in style, in intent. It looked as very similar, and that a lot of people were, basically discussing, would this big author actually enter this competition? And it turned out later on that some figured out there were certain inconsistencies that happen, certain artifacts that happen when you do AI generation. And one of the examples, and the people figured out, is, for example, it's famous. You have like, oh, the number of fingers. AI isn't good at drawing hands, so there are a lot of AI generated images may have a different number of fingers or something like that. There are more subtle artifacts than this, but that's one of the examples. People have figured out this was AI generated, and it caused a storm. It was basically, not only did you didn't rip off 1,000 different artists, you actually ripped off one specific artist. There are a lot of people who took hours, days, weeks to draw content for this competition, while this person generated it in a second. But then this person argued that, hey, but I spent a lot of time training the AI, and it's a significant problem, and there isn't a really good solution, or well, there is, and it's basically, but the the solution is that people won't share their art online anymore, and that's obviously not really great, because we lose out on the ability to basically this renaissance of art that we had for past 20 years, where you aren't locked into going to a museum to see certain artists, and you can see small artists from all over the world. That's something that we may lose out on if we keep going in this direction, because artists are less motivated to post their artwork, because it can be used to create essentially something that will make other people money. uh, Okay, so there I mentioned this. Basically, there are different cultural sensitivities. Some people are more accepting of AI. Some people aren't. The problem is, how can you localize AI? Because different cultures may have different approaches to things. They may have uh, different customs, different languages, and an AI support system that's developed for a doctor, a medical doctor in USA, is going to have different requirements than AI in for a doctor in Croatia or Serbia or Greece, uh, wherever wherever else you try to apply it, because there are different approaches in using this. And one of the examples is, promoting, you need to have a set of global standards, but you want to respect, local values, local approaches, basically because you don't want to homogenize. We talk about homogenization as a problem here, and that's something that I mentioned before. You want to use local people, experts in a certain area, to basically tell them, hey, does this work for you? Does it need to be adjusted? We have this general model, but we can retrain it to push it more towards the way that you are used to working. Maybe some cultures are more accepting of just getting a result from the AI that you check, versus other cultures will be like, no, I'm making this decision. This is just one of the tools that I'm using. I don't want to check anyone's work. I just want to use AI as a support system, as maybe like an alarm, to be like, hey, check if this person, maybe you should check more about this person. Hey, this person has certain indicators towards a certain disease. Let's maybe run additional tests. That might be acceptable in some places. Other cultures might discard this and will want AI to like directly tell them, like, this person has high risk of diabetes, run tests. Some cultures will say, like, why is it telling me? I'm a doctor, I'm not a secretary. Why should I order additional tests if there are indicators that point towards that it should be ordered automatically? Other cultures say, like, no, 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 I don't want anything ordered automatically. I'm the doctor, I want to check and order the work. So those are some examples of where AI can step on toes of people, because essentially not, people want to use the same tool in different ways, and this is something that you need to account for when you are developing AI tools. One of the examples, that we have is AI, companions, chatbots. Basically, you can use AI-driven chatbots for support to people who need, mental health support, therapy, caregiving. You can use them for education. And the question here is, there are two elements, like basically, should you use, a black box model that you don't know what's happening to help someone, with therapy? What if this person is, they can, can this exacerbate problems further? On the other hand, let's say someone is depressed, they want to talk to someone, they connect to an online platform, right? And they talk to people. There are a lot of like support platforms online today. If there isn't a human available to talk to them, is it better to just turn them down and be like, no, go be depressed on your own, instead of wanting to talk about it? Is it better to give them an AI chatbot and tell them like, hey, at least you're talking to someone. If they're talking to someone, should you tell them they're talking to an AI chatbot? Or because maybe they will refuse help in that way, even though there is research that has showed that people can react positively to therapy with AI chatbots if they don't know that they are talking to AI. But what if they figure it out? What if AI makes a mistake and they are like, "Oh my God, this is an AI. I'm so stupid. I spent 3 hours like pouring my heart out to this machine," uh, and stuff like that. There are a lot of ethical questions, basically around, is this fine? Is this isn't fine? Another example is, a lot of young people today are expressing that they are lonely, and in part, some research indicates that this is in part because it's harder to socialize in real life, essentially, than it is to socialize online. Taking opening Discord is and talking to my friend, is much simpler than me, showering, getting dressed, sitting in my car, driving down to a bar or someplace, talking there. We probably have to spend some money. We have to get home. My friend might not be up to it. We have to discuss where we are going to meet, etc. Or I can just open up Discord or WhatsApp or something and just talk to them right there. So a lot of people are, while less and less people, are hanging out in real life, so to speak, especially in more developed cultures. That have easier access to media or more stable access to internet, etc. But now, we're introducing AI where you can have a conversation with someone without even putting the effort of that initial uh, discussion, or meeting someone, or talking to someone, or reaching out to someone. At first, you basically have a conversation on demand, but it's not with a real person. And a lot of, especially younger people who don't have a lot of experience with person-to-person relationships, might develop emotional attachment to this AI. It's actually a famous example. If you go into any automation company or something, especially if they have robots, but even when they have regular machines, people form emotional attachments to this. I know one example where a soldier has essentially risked their life to rescue a bomb defusal robot, because the whole squad considered that bomb defusal robot a part of the squad over their years of deployment in a war zone, right? They were essentially, when the soldier was asked, like, why did you risk your life to go back and grab a robot? They were like, oh, it's he saved my life a lot of times. And that's essentially, people will peg bond with anything. People will, that's why we have pets, etc. So we are good at creating emotional connections to things that don't necessarily have emotional connections to us. We will peg bond immediately with whatever we have, including inanimate objects. even going back in history for thousands of years. You will see things. I believe in Epic of Gilgamesh, you have things about items being treated as people. And that's something that, but now you don't have like, oh my God, this spear is my it has been in my family for years, and I have fought with it in many battles, and I have formed an emotional relationship. The spear is talking back right now, and that's a big problem because it creates a positive reinforcement loop where this AI that you have formed an emotional relationship with, have back bonded with, is giving you back positive reinforcement, and you're creating a positive reinforcement loop where you actually develop a real emotional attachment to this AI. And when you can get this emotional attachment to AI at a moment's notice, on request, a lot of people are worried that we are going to drive towards getting a conversation and emotional attachment from AIs instead of getting it from from other people. I have mentioned uh, this earlier, but yeah, social media uses AI, to basically you can shape user behavior, user preferences by pushing people in a certain direction. Uh, the more people engage, the more money you get. If someone has a mild position on something, they might write one post, or they might interact with one person a month regarding that topic. If you have a very very high very hot opinion on something, you will discuss it 10 times a day with different people, especially on AI where it's easier. And if and that's something that people on social media want. They want more interaction. They want you to make more posts because it's a positive indicator for them. You will see more ads when they're selling their shares. They can say they have more posts by more users, etc. And you can use bots. You can use AI bots to basically push people slowly over time into separating them. And when you separate people, you create more interaction, more arguments, more stuff, basically driving additional points here. Then you can actually make target specific people, specific things with specific posts that they will be interesting to them, or advertising that will be interesting to them to basically drive them forward. As I say here in my final point here is that yes, there are opportunities for positive engagement, but again, a lot of times positive engagement, uh, when you positively engage with something, uh, look at it this way. If I make a post and you like the post, you're going to say, "Oh, that's a very cool post." If I post something that you don't like, you're going to say, "Oh my God, this sucks," and I'm going to tell you, "No, it doesn't suck. Shut up. You don't know anything." And then you're going to reply me, "No, you don't know anything." So we get much more engagement on a negative post. That's only how people use social media. And while yes, AI can be used to push towards positive engagement, people in charge of setting things up, running the social media aren't motivated for this. That's a societal issue. It's and a business issue. Again, I mentioned there's educational AI is growing in the same way. You have AI companions, social impact. Obviously, you can have an AI to help teach people, especially younger children who are easier, who are taught easier topics. You can have an AI chatbot, and you certainly have, your child is, when most of us here, when you were in school, when you had maybe, you had some at home, you had some homework. If you got stuck, you maybe ask your parents. If your parents didn't know or they weren't available, maybe they were working. you didn't solve it right until the next day, or you just wrote whatever. Now you can have an AI chatbot that's trained in this area that you can, just ask it. I'm like, oh, I'm stuck with this. How do I solve it? And you get uh, a lot of, you basically get support for people, especially for students, especially young students who sadly may not have access to that support from, their parents and similar. The problem with this is, again, you don't have transparency in what AI is making and what AI is teaching to children. What if it errors out? What if it teaches them something wrong? What if it teaches them something inappropriate? Second, how are you? You want to improve that AI, so you want to collect student data, but do you want to, just think of it, you're a teenager, maybe you have some personal topic that you're discussing, and you decide to discuss it with your AI teacher, because you're too embarrassed to talk to your real teacher about, you falling in love with having a crush on someone or something health related or something like that. Would you be comfortable with that data then being stored somewhere and used in the future? Even though probably no one will look at that data personally. Me as a teenager, I would have been mortified thinking that, like, oh my God, I asked someone this question and it's now being shared, and someone else is going to look at it. What if it leaks? You want to protect students from that. And finally, as I said, not everyone has access to AI tools. Basically, I have money. Maybe, if I have a child, I can tell them, hey, I'm very busy, but here I bought you, I paid 200 euros for the amount for this really great chatbot that's going to serve as your teacher. And if you have a problem, no matter, if you homework and I'm not at home, you can use that. A poorer family might not have money, and their child again won't be able to do homework uh, because their parents are also outside working. So my child gets ahead because they have access to especially this AI teaching tool that this other person that this other student might not have. Is that fair? Should it be provided, at government level? Should the school provide this AI? But does it run into different problems? Maybe some people don't want AI in education. Again, a lot of these issues, I'm purposefully trying to stay vague. I don't want to form your opinions on anything, but basically, I believe a lot of people, even here right now, would have different opinions on these kind of different things because it's a very divisive subject. I mentioned a lot of stuff in healthcare, and I mentioned diagnosis support, expert system support. You get analysis not of just medical images, but patient data and stuff. And this is something that's super popular lately. It's personalized treatment because every person doesn't react to treatments in the same way based on you know uh, here is the simplest example. If you ever gone under surgery, they measured your weight because someone who has more body mass requires more anesthesia to basically stay asleep during surgery. That's something that requires, that's a simple example, but every treatment can actually be personalized. Being like, hey, this medicine might work better with this person than this medicine, or hey, you should use higher dosage of this medicine than it's recommended by default. And that's something that's very common, predictive analytics. That's something that it's much easier to treat someone in early stages of a disease or before they got the disease. For example, something like if someone has a higher risk of diabetes, you can tell them that before they develop type 2 diabetes, and they will tell them like, hey, no, stop eating so much sugar, exercise more, and you may avoid getting diabetes, and you will eliminate, and that's zero cost essentially on medical system, while the person with diabetes has certain costs associated with it. So yeah, there are, again, monitoring devices exist. A lot of problems here is basically, do you trust AI? to make AI to make decisions for you. If you have like I mentioned diabetes, or let's say you have a pump that pumps insulin in your body when you need it. Do you want AI there? Do you trust it? A lot of people don't. A lot of people are like, oh no, I want like a strict mathematical programmed by an expert and want an AI making decision about my treatment. The other problem is again data. You can't train AI without data. A lot of people aren't willing to share data. They don't want their data misused. They don't want their data shared with people who aren't their doctors because most doctors want to sit down and program an AI model. They will send it to someone else, to an external company, to someone like me in academia to develop a model for them. And a lot of patients aren't happy with that, even if it is anonymized, etc. A lot of people aren't comfortable with it. So those are some issues. And as I said, patient privacy, AI data needs problem are a possible problem. Bias in AI models. So if I have a lot of older population for a certain disease and I have a younger patient, my model might make an error because it's biased towards it had more data training on older patients than younger patients. Human oversight, it's basically what do I mean by this point of ensuring human oversight? You can trust AI is a computer program. Computer programs, especially as complex ones as AI systems, make mistakes. You don't want them making life or death decisions. I would never trust an AI that I developed to make a life or death decisions because every system makes errors. And while they're great as a support system, do you want to have a human oversight making that decision? So maybe something that's not as important, maybe deciding on some minor health impact that doesn't isn't that important. Okay, maybe we can automate that fully with AI, but we don't want to let this basically grow forward to making a full-on life or death critical health decisions. And again, this is something that I mentioned a lot of times, and we keep repeating it. It is basically, do you have access to a healthcare? That's already a problem with healthcare. Different centers, different hospitals have access to different equipment, and not everyone has access to the same type of equipment and same quality of treatment, and that is even increasing when you introduce AI in it. One of the problems. This is very common. It exists everywhere. I'm going to tell you, a bit of. I can't go in detail, but AI tools are used in law enforcement everywhere. We hear a lot of it from China, right? Like, oh, China will, if you jaywalk across the street, you will automatically, it will detect you based on your face and even if your face is hidden, you're wearing a mask, you can actually do gator detection and figure out who you are, and it will automatically send you fine because you jaywalked or you littered, you threw some trash on the ground, or something like that. That exists everywhere. It's not as much use, but a lot of if you live in a more developed country, AI tools are used to identify a lot of different things. There are some benefits to it, like you have predictive policing, predictive crime prevention. This means that if you have AI predictive models that will say like, hey, this event is high risk than this event, you should maybe introduce more more policemen there to do peacekeeping, etc. Or vice versa, like, hey, this protest, historically looking at these types of protests and based on the information in the past, AI can conclude that this protest is low risk. We don't need to have 200 policemen there, right? We can distribute these policemen at different areas where they are maybe more needed than observing this peaceful protest. Yeah. So that's something that exists isn't necessarily negative, but there are a lot of problems with like facial recognition, or as I said, if a face is covered, they will the way you walk, your walking gait can be recognized, and if there are a lot of cameras, it can be matched with your face and your identification. There are a lot of different AI tools for analyzing evidence, especially digital evidence. Like, if you get someone and you have their hard drive and they have like a 4 terabyte hard drive with a lot of files, looking through it, especially if the files may be, hidden, if you're talking about something that's criminal, you may miss it. So there are a lot of AI tools that will tell you like, hey, this was that will help you classify files into this is possibly interesting, and and this is just like non-criminal normal data the person has. But what happens, when AI is used to generate to help regenerate deleted data? Does that, well, AI is essentially making stuff up. Is that something that we can use in, to condemn someone or not? It's to convict someone or not? It's a big question. Is this accurate enough? Is it fair enough? We will see some examples of this fairness when it comes special to facial recognition. So there, as I mentioned, there are different types of AI biases. Basically, biases that you need to understand when you're coming into this, when you're training something, is there are training data bias, algorithmic bias, and cognitive bias. So what are each of these biases? Training data bias is basically AI systems learn from data. If you have a bias in data, like you have more people from one group than the other, if you have more older people than younger people, if you have more men than women, that can influence your algorithm. This is something that there are a lot of examples like facial recognition algorithms that perform poorly on people of color. There was an example with a camera manufacturer that simply that had like a facial recognition system back in the day that worked only on white people, and a lot of people were angry about it. Simply because the algorithm they used just used white people to generate a model that they used for facial recognition. If you are using if you're collecting data on crimes and you are collecting that data in an area that's predominantly occupied by a certain group of ethnic group of people, well, obviously, a lot more crimes will be committed by that group of people. If I analyze, in Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, I'm going to say, oh, well, 95% of crimes was committed by Croatians. Well, yeah, obviously, it was committed by Croatians because it's in Croatia. Same goes if I go to Athens, it's going to be, most people who commit crimes are going to be Greeks. It's a bad bad type of data to use. It's something that we need to understand. Like, hey, there is an issue here. Labeling. So I don't know if you talk about this, but a lot of times data labeling is done manually, and if you have a person who is labeling this, they can actually introduce bias. So, for example, you can have something like I give you a stack of files and tell you like, hey, I want to go to these files, and for each person in here, I want you to tell me whether they would be a good candidate or a bad candidate for this job. And let's say I give it to someone who is racist, and they just disqualify everyone who isn't their race. And then I use that data. I have introduced this person's bias into the system. So that's something that you need to be careful about. There are a lot of different examples where data itself, you're creating a model that's fruit of the poison tree. Algorithmic bias, on the other hand, happens when you are training. When you train data and you actually create a model due to flow training data or due to flow methodology of you using for example, I mentioned here programming errors where you can sometimes manually introduce bias, and you may want to manually introduce bias into your models because uh, to counteract something like this, when you have, I know that I have training data bias here, I will introduce counter bias manually. And if you overcorrect here, you can go into, a completely different, to completely different side. So yeah, so for example, we have here vocabulary. One of the great examples is, if you come to Croatia and let's say I want to create, I have a system that basically is going to conduct an interview for me. And I've trained the voice recognition system, but I've trained it on my accent. And you are from Greece, you come here, and you're also talking English. And I say oh no, the system is fair, it's fair towards everyone who comes to test it because it uses English. But uh, my manner, tone, my vocabulary that I'm using, my accent, my tone of voice is going to be different than someone from Greece. And when you come here, this AI system, depending on how I program it, might disqualify you because oh, this person isn't very good at talking, and this is like a sales position. We need people who are very confident, very good at talking, presenting stuff. Just because you have so it may discriminate you basically because I misprogrammed it. So yeah, that's not necessarily it can happen consciously or unconsciously. Most of the stuff is there's so-called Milton's razor, which says that don't attribute to evil what you can attribute to miscompetence, because a lot of times programmers won't necessarily make this mistake on purpose. They definitely can. They can definitely act maliciously, but in a lot of cases, developers will introduce this. It will happen because they don't think about it, or they aren't exposed to certain situations, so they don't think oh, I need to include a different things or think about different things when I'm programming. So that's something. This is why it's important to have classes that focus on social aspects of programming, especially when we're talking about AI and data collection. And this is why a lot of more modern study programs that are focusing on this. We have seen, especially when we were researching for this short cycle course, we noticed that a lot of newer study systems and include classes graduate and undergraduate programs include classes that focus on social issues surrounding application of AI or just computer development, because it can actually be a significant issue, and a lot of biases can get introduced to developers simply because they never were told that they should think about it. And finally, we have a cognitive bias, which is essentially it's a bias that's introduced by neither the data itself, neither the algorithm, but it's introduced by a person based on certain decisions we're making. Great example is you have some data and you have a data set that was created by a big university in United States of America, by Harvard, versus they said that was created by some city you can pronounce in China, and you're going to no, Americans are better. Then you should probably use both, if it's possible. Uh, you should probably combine both data sets or something, because different populations, will have different data, and you want to, push towards that the direction that you're using, that you aren't favoritizing a certain group. Uh, NIST National Association focuses on the human systemic societal factors, because basically you may prefer certain, as I said, certain data sources, or you may prefer certain approaches, certain algorithms. So I just talked to a friend of mine who is a physicist, and when he had a PhD, he was actually he's Croatian, but he studied, he got his PhD. His mentor was from Belgrade, from Serbia. So, one country, we are Croatia and Serbia next to each other. And he told me that he basically ran into a problem, and there was a discussion at his defense, because uh, physicists from Serbia prefer certain sources of literature, mainly Russia, while physicists in Croatia that were so his mentors preferred and taught him, gave him certain methodologies that were included in that were accepted as basically perfectly normal approach, considering Russian literature. But in Croatia, where people prefer like Western Europe or American literature, the people who were in his defense committee were like, "What is this methodology? We never heard of it before. What are you talking about?" Well, he presented it as a matter of fact because, well, obviously everyone knows this methodology. That's one example of a simple cognitive bias. So you may pick a method that basically you were taught to use instead of something that's more widely accepted and potentially better. Yeah, so those are some examples of cognitive biases that you as a person can introduce aside from just data or algorithm training and programming afterwards. So yeah, these are so we mainly talk about problems that exist, how they exist, etc. We are going to now talk about essentially, I used it, a title like "Coming to Terms with AI." What is covered here in the next like 10 slides is essentially possible issues that exist with how we are addressing these possible issues that exist with AI. What are some elements and what are some, again, challenges with those elements. So something that's or recommended as, we have something that we're talking about ethical AI. This means that, ethically developed and ethically applied AI. And there are some elements here that exist that can be discussed. So I'm going to, go through them one by one just to, address them and clarify more what I mean by them. So what is generally meant by them. So we have utilitarianism, where we want to focus on greater good for the majority of people this is going to be applied for, because that's what AI is. AI are generalization tools. They are statistical tools. They aren't when they can't necessarily be made, to fit well for every single person. They can be used to, create essentially a good tool for everyone. And sometimes, if I fall into a certain class, a certain decision might not be good for me, but it might be good for everyone else in the group. And one of the examples here is the type of error. So, for example, do you want a model that makes that if you have cancer, that's more likely so there are two different types of error that an AI can make. This is something we probably discussed in other classes. This is why we have different scores like recall, precision, instead of just using accuracy. But basically, you can make an error like that. For example, you're classifying patients with carcinoma, and you want to say whether a person has a carcinoma or not. There are two types of errors you can make. You can make an error where you say, which is actually a false positive, where you tell the person who doesn't have carcinoma that they do, or you can have a false negative where you tell the person who doesn't have carcinoma that they do, that they don't. Right? So with person who has carcinoma, you tell them they don't. So what is a greater error? Well, we prefer, in this instance, we would prefer to tell the person who doesn't have carcinoma that they do, because running additional tests is going to show that we are wrong, right? Of course, that person won't be happy. They will be, they will be mad. They will get scared. It's possible they will get depressed or something like that. Yes, but it's much better to make that sort of an error than to take a person who does have cancer and tell them they don't and just send them home and tell them to take some ibuprofen and go home. That's a significant. So that's, we are trying to make a decision that's going to benefit most people, because no model is perfect. Models are going to make errors, and we would prefer to pick a model that makes an error in the way that hurts the least amount of people. But yes, some people are going to be. No one would like to get, a carcinoma diagnosis uh, in error, but it's better than hurting a lot more people that will get sent home if they have carcinoma without treatment. So that's something we want to focus on, and we want to figure out, and that's something that you need to sit down and think about carefully. If you're in if you're trying to detect fault and automatically stop, like an automated system, if someone gets injured, well, you would rather stop the system without injury than without anyone getting injured randomly, right? Because you mismeasured something, than the other way, where the system continues working while someone's hand is stuck within a machine, right? So those are the kinds of frameworks that you need to pay attention to and discuss. Then we have a deontology, where we will want to focus. Uh, Basically, it means that we want to keep our AI steady. Don't let it grow too wild, make decisions that are outside of what we want. And we usually do this by checking. It's very hard to control AI itself. AIs can hallucinate, especially we are talking about ChatGPT like, so large language models, LLMs. They can hallucinate and make errors. How, so you usually control them with additional software filtering uh, before you go here. But even during training, we want to significantly punish stuff that goes against rules and their task. So, for example, I mentioned like having an AI teaching assistant, right, for students. And obviously something that you want to do, you want that AI to act like in a cool way, right? You want it to be hip, because it may connect better with students. But you definitely don't want it to say like, hey, you should grab a handle of vodka and a box of cigarettes and go behind school and make friends that way, right? Your AI shouldn't do something. It should, if it's asked, how can I make friends? That's not the answer it should give. It should give something like, oh, maybe you should try talking to people, express your interest, talk to them about their interests, something like that. Not go something that's against rules, even though the AI may figure it out as a good answer, right? Uh, the third point that I have here is virtue ethics, which basically when we're talking about ethics, we want to virtue signal to AI. We want to basically reflect our moral virtues, not this is a problem of having if you ever heard the term, some people have a white morality, some have black, some have gray, and other people have a blue and orange morality. It's completely outside of our scope of what morality is, and that's something that can be apparent between different cultures, where something that's potentially normal in one culture is considered horrible in another culture, or vice versa. We want to, we generally want to get these ethics reflecting, our moral virtues, not what AI itself figures out is moral. The problem here is obviously, as I said, different cultures can have different morals, and this is why we talked about AI localization. We don't want, for example, if we are looking at different different driving skills or driving examples. I'm trying to use something that's relatively light as an example here, but for example, in USA you can in America you can turn right on the red light, which you can do in most of Europe, I believe. So obviously you want to have an AI that follows that rule in America, because you don't want people, if it's driving AI, you don't want people behind it to get annoyed. uh, uh, you don't want people behind it to get annoyed. While in Europe you don't want it to follow that rule, because it's going to make because it's obviously going to run into an intersection and make an error. And then finally, you want to have ethical committees, review boards for a project that make sure that things are followed, and that will ask these tough questions, because we as developers, we don't want these tough questions asked. We want stuff to go smoothly, and just give us money to make our AI project. Someone needs to be here and actually do that checking. And there are different regulations for most for privacy, that are getting expanded or adjusted to AI, because we are talking about data. Data isn't necessarily just AI; it's also about privacy. But a lot of this, like GDPR and CCPA, are getting expanded today to include AI usage. And just because someone agreed to let you store the data somewhere, because it helps you, it doesn't mean you can do AI. You can use the data for AI. And those and more of those standards are emerging, and focusing on, hey, if you're doing AI, do it transparently, so people know, so people can opt into it, or opt out of it easily, etc., to basically create more trust towards companies who build stuff with AI. uh, Another example is, I mentioned employment decisions, whether it's hiring or firing someone, whether you want to you want to have an algorithm that's well trained, and you will usually want to have an oversight here. uh, Whether you want to check the work the AI did. You don't want to just have AI do the work, and figure everything out on its own without you checking and saying that, oh my God, it turned down all people who signed up for work who are black and only accepted white applicants. Let's There was an error before we finalize this decision. Let's do it manually or something. Same goes for monitoring what your employees are doing. There are ethical ways to do it, and there are invasive ways to do it, and not just in usage of AI, right? If you're tracking, but in how you approach it. If you have a very productive worker and you have like an AI measurement that follows like how many checkpoints they have completed, or how many elements of work they have uh, done, and you see the dropping, maybe calling them in to an office and yelling at them isn't the best approach. Maybe telling them like, hey, is there a problem, is there something you want to discuss it? So and that's sort of a cognitive error when we're talking about biases before. It's not AI told you that their performance is dropping, but maybe you have to do it in a certain way. The problem is, obviously, most of the AIs are black box, and you don't know why this is happening. Why did it tell you that, hey, this person is getting less productive? Generally, talk to them and see what's happening. Don't just fire them immediately. Yeah, so that's the problem with transparency. Tell them like, hey, AI decided. Can you tell me what do you think there is a problem? Why did this happen? These are the metrics that we are inputting into it. Do you might know what might be the problem, or what's going on? And again, companies won't do it on their own. You need to have a regulation for this. Basically, companies exist today to create more money. That's the goal. If they think someone is underproducing because an AI algorithm told them so, they will just fire them. They probably won't bother necessarily with checking, because it's additional work that might lose them money until the next evaluation, and they don't care about the future, etc. So we need regulations are necessary to protect workers from stuff like that. We have, again, mitigating inequality when it comes to, things like that. I mentioned different issues with, inequality. AI can create more and more inequality. So first is, creating what we use. I know not many people like the word inclusive, but it's the best to illustrate it here. We want our data set to be statistically equal. We want to have we want it to represent the real situation well. If we are going to use it on different groups of people, we want all groups of people to be, as they are. There are programs to, programs, not computer programs, but governmental programs, ethical programs, ministries should take care that, if there's AI tools that are used in education, everyone should have access to them. If I'm in college, my friend, we should have, access to something like ChatGPT at the university level, maybe, instead of some people having it, some people not, because at the end, we should all have the same, same equal approach to the tools that we can use in education. It would be the same. A lot of people get angry about, oh, it's AI, people are using it to cheat, but it's the same, if you're in engineering, for example, and your professor tells you we're going to use SolidWorks, you need to get the license, and the license for SolidWorks is like $1,500. Isn't it better for that professor who wants to use SolidWorks to either switch to free software or to essentially talk to the makers of SolidWorks and acquire licenses for the students if he wants to use that. So that's something that you want to have everyone an equal approach, not let someone without a certain piece of software or something, whether it's AI or not. Again, ethical review boards, regulations, and everything that needs to exist to check for these things. So, generally, no one likes review boards. No one likes their work being checked in that way or being told, "Oh, you need to do this, or you to do this." But these are the types of problems that can snowball very easily into really, really big problems. So we need to have this checked equally, because we don't want to, have something that wasn't reviewed by an AI competent or AI trained ethical review board, and then have that used for 20 years as an algorithm in a hospital somewhere, right? And then figure out it has been biased, and it has told that, oh no, if you are young, you can have this disease because most of the people in my data set were old. Yeah, and it resulted in possible, issues with people, etc. So that's something that we need to, we need to have someone on an ethical review board who is going to be capable of asking the question and telling us, hey, let's see the data that you plan to use for this. Let me do statistical analysis on it. Let me see if there is an error or not in your data, and tell you that basically you should remove some variables, or maybe you should basically collect more data, or balance it, or limit the usage and say like, hey, you only have older people here, you only have a couple of young people, let's just use that tool only on people who are above 60 years of age, right? Don't use it on everyone. Those are the kind of things that ethical review boards should do, but you need to have AI knowledgeable people on them. Uh, and again, as I said, equitable distribution of AI benefits, whether it's models that people are using, whether it's the tools that are developed by AI, etc. Right, that's something that need to be set up governmentally. If this, it's maybe I could have written it better, but what this basically means is that if I'm an employer and I'm buying an AI tool that's going to allow me to replace 20 of my workers, I'm going to benefit a lot of that, because the AI tool is going to cost me, I don't know, $1,000 a year, and the employees, each employee would cost me 20,000 euros a year times 20 employees. That's I'm essentially saving 400,000 euros. That benefit needs to be distributed more equitably. So not equally necessarily, but equitably. It needs to be so. Some of that money needs to go into rehiring those people, whether it's going to go directly to them to allow them to weather the storm until they can get a different job, or it's going to go into training these people, uh, training these people to do a different task in my company, or to upskill them to overview this AI, right? Because they have knowledge in that domain. Uh, Essentially, if they're in technical support team, maybe I'm going to train them better to, instead of being level one, which is going to be served by AI, which is that, basic, like restart your router or plug in and plug out the Ethernet cable. They're going to get additional training, and they're going to be like a higher level employee. That's equitable distribution. It's not, if I'm saving 400,000 euros on this, it's not going to go all of it in my pocket. Some of it is going to go so it is going to be distributed to help people who are influenced by this decision. And that's something that, again, needs to be regulated, because most people aren't going to do it on their own. Again, these are, their importance in AI governments. For example, you need standards, standardization that's going to tell you, like, hey, to use AI, these are the list of rules or standards that needs to apply to. Uh, Governments are necessary here, to make the standards, to accept the standards, and to make sure that you have, that these standards are applied. And the wider reaching the standards are, you have international collaboration on this governance. If you have a standard that talks about how synthetic data can be generated, or how AI models can be used, if you have something international, it helps you, because if it's not international, a certain corporation can be like, oh, I have offices in Croatia and I have offices in Serbia. Serbia has made this standard, and I need to follow all of this to basically, no, I'm just going to move this my processing, my hardware, my AI team. I'm going to move it to Croatia and let them work there, because it's not governed properly there. They don't have the standard. So international collaboration, especially when you're talking about corporate accountability for AI, is super important. The other thing is, we want to, looking at this class and everything, it seems like AI is really bad. No one likes AI, is going to be a problem, yada yada. Not necessarily. AI is a good thing. This is why we have this course where we are trying to teach you about AI, and basically, give you some additional knowledge, etc. AI tools are magnificent. They work better than anything we had so far, and they're enabling us to do a lot of things that we couldn't do just like 10 years back. They are truly revolutionary. But so it big problem is, how are these systems? We don't want everyone to think like AI is bad just because we are trying to regulate it. Think of it as driving. Driving is a great thing, but it is regulated, because if you let everyone drive however they want, it's going to be a problem, right? So we have regulations on driving. That doesn't mean driving is bad. But we don't want people to avoid using AI. We want people to use AI more, but to because it's going to help us just generally, as long as it's properly applied. So how are we going to how are we going to raise this trust, and how are we going to actually, if we are introducing regulations, what regulations should we introduce to let people know that AI isn't damaging them, or isn't giving problems. First is explainable AI. There are methods that are much more complex, but they're what we call explainable. This means that if I use the term black box a few times during the lecture, black box simply means that I don't know what's going on. inside. If you're using something, I don't know which methods you covered in your introduction to DC and to data science and AI, but you probably mentioned something like neural networks or multi-layer perceptrons. Neural networks are incredibly complex. They are, in the end, at the end of the day, you can, it's a mathematical equation you can write out, but that mathematical equation, it's massive. It's, practically impossible to write down, and you can't analyze it. You can't understand why it's making a certain decision. There are different techniques, such as decision trees, that can be used as explainable, that you can follow along and say like, why is a certain decision being made, and then you can understand whether there is a bias introduced or not, uh, and you can explain to a person how has this decision been made, right? And that's super important. If someone, if someone walks in and tells like, hey, why are you denying my insurance claim here? Well, here is the reason why. You can tell them that, and a lot of people are going to be much more comfortable. They might not be happy at having like their claim denied, but they're going to be much more calmer when you give them the reason. You tell them, oh, sadly, you are earning less than what we need, or etc. If you're like denying them a house loan, say like, oh, you aren't earning enough. You need to earn. You see our model here in this node says like denied you because you are earning less than 1,000 euros a month, and we can't give you a house loan there because yeah, it's a problem. So you need to, and that gives person an actionable fit, some an action that they can do and reapply instead of telling them like, hey, why are you denying me house loan, and just shrugging your shoulders and saying like, oh, where I decided. Yeah, that's the difference between how people are going to feel about those two decisions, those two presentations of the same decision. The second thing is, open source AI projects, not in just open source code that you can access, but also data that's being used. Having the data publicly available. There's again a problem with like what data can be publicly available or not, but basically having it open source, so people can check what's going on and what kind of data is being used and how is that data manipulated, and knowing that there isn't a filter that automatically filters out a certain group of people. That those things are super important in raising trust. Audits, by I mentioned we need a governance. I mentioned it here. We can just create a platform or an ethical committee board or something, and just tell them and then don't do anything. If a company is using algorithms, okay, how are you collecting the data? Let's see the code. Let's see the data that you're using to train this. Is there a bias in it? Have you introduced the bias in it since the last time? This is something that you need to address. Retrain the algorithm. You know, Retrain the algorithm, filter the outputs, introduce bias manually to counteract the existing bias, etc. And finally, this is something, as I said, I'm an automation engineer. I work at the Department of Automation at Faculty of Engineering in Rijeka. Uh, and that's something that was always, present. Job loss because of, AI, manipulation, as I mentioned, because of AI. That's something that needs to be addressed, usually at the governmental level, where people are going to say like, hey, if you're getting replaced, for example, I don't know laws everywhere, but in Croatia, if you're getting fired, you can get fired as a technical extra. Like, we don't need this position anymore. That's something that's called a technical extra, right? You're technically not needed to in a certain process anymore. So if I buy a machine that replaces you, you have been hitting something with a hammer to straighten it out, and now I get a machine that straightens out a certain piece automatically. You are getting fired as a technical extra, and you have certain uh, rights because you were eliminated, and me as an employee need to take care there are certain laws, like I can't rehire someone instead of you. I need to pay you a certain amount of money more than I usually would have to. You have a certain priorities and certain benefits for being hired because your job was replaced, right? As opposed to and that's something that does exist in Croatia with AI, and I believe it exists in different countries as well, some sort of equivalent of it. But yeah, it's something that sort of things needs to happen and needs to probably be even stricter because AI is growing. We aren't entering a situation where you're replacing three people, one in each shift with a machine. With a single machine, you are replacing 400 people in your call center with a single algorithm, right? And a lot of protections that exist now aren't good enough when we're talking about that large of a scale. There are, there are other issues such as transparency challenges, basically uh, that also need to be talked about when we're talking about users. If we are talking about this, mainly this first point here, having explainable AI, having open source AI, we want to be transparent about it, and that's transparency is key to ensure ethical AI. Uh, and that is, complexity of AI models. If you go right now to ChatGPT and tell me, tell it, draw a picture of a bottle, right? The mathematical complexity behind it, right, is incredible. But it's so simple for you. You just type in, write me a bottle, you get a picture of a bottle, you save it, right? Uh, that's something that's hard for people to understand because a lot of people think if it's simple for them, it's simple behind, if you ask, if you take, 100 people who drive cars and you ask them like, hey, is a car a simple thing? They say, yes, yes, you hit the gas, you turn the wheel, and that's everything that goes on. Like, but if the car breaks down, they are in trouble. They are having issues. So that's the problem. You are exposing a very simple thing, and people think uh, what's behind it is also simple. It's not, and that's something that is very challenging because even if you give a person the access to an AI model, for most people, it's not going to mean anything, right? It's going to be just a bunch of code, a bunch of mathematics that they don't understand. So what's and that's an argument that's being made by a lot of companies today. What's the point of me making this AI transparent to public when, like, what are they going to do about it? Or you want me to make my data set transparent to public? Great. It's 5 petabytes of data that I'm storing in a data center the size of a small city. What are you going to do? Download it to your computer? Right. It's, the scale of certain things is just above what people expect of it, and when they are looking for transparency, it's not easy to give them that transparency because it's beyond what they expect. Again, when we are building something, we want proprietarity because if you that's something that you notice, getting like a large language model 2 years ago was impossible. Then ChatGPT released their model, and just hints at how they trained ChatGPT, the initial releases of it allowed a ton of people to release other LLMs. You can just, you have AI chatbots all over the place right now. Different, you have character AI, you have this, you have that, you have, for just chatting as your friend, for support, for this, for that. Uh, you know, uh, and that's just, without releasing the code behind ChatGPT. That's just being like, hey, this can be done. Here's an API access, build upon it, etc. If other companies, who are focused on research and development, whose goal is to sell you a tool, are they going to want? It decreases the likelihood of them wanting to build upon something and develop something if they need to make it open source, right? It's easy to us to say make it open source, but as a programmer, a lot of people might say something like, well, if I release this open source, people are going to copy it. It's practically possible for me to address every single person who copies it, right? Because I'm a sole developer, I don't have the money to hunt down people in China making a copy of my software. And I'm not going to profit on it as much as I would if it was closed source. So, uh, do I have a business plan if I'm releasing software open source, or do I only have it, have some financial viability if I'm releasing it as a proprietary software? And that's it. And that can be applied to data as well. Like, hey, this data is mine. I collected it. If I release it publicly for people to check, people can use that data that I spent months collecting, to train their AIs. That's problem because for example, for my PhD, I have collected a lot of data on robot energy usage, and one of the people that I work with was like, "Oh, you can sell that data." I was like, "No, I'm going to release it for free. I don't care," because scientists look at data sharing in one way. It's like, oh, people can do other things build upon this. They can run analysis. They can develop something. That's great. While a lot of people, looking at the proprietary, will be like, "Oh, this data, it took a lot of time to collect. I want to capitalize on that." So that's something that's also, problem with open systems. Uh, Third, interdisciplinary collaboration. I'm glad, when we were organizing this, I'm one of the organizers here for WST. I was really happy to see that there are a lot of people from different fields here because AI ethics, when we're talking in just AI development, again, if you were if some of you are in practical data collection, I made it very clear that you need experts in a certain field to understand, to just build the model. And that need grows even greater when we are talking about AI ethics and understanding. So, we need to have, doctors if you're building medical AI, not just for performance, but for ethics as well. Because not because engineers are evil, but because engineers may not understand certain things because they were never exposed to them, right? And finally, you want to teach people about what AI can and what AI can't do. I mentioned deepfakes before. We want people to understand, like, hey, this is a deepfake. I have that. It happens. My mother is older, and she shows me the video, and tell her mom that's AI generated. And in the beginning, she was like, "No, what do you mean it's AI generated?" And I told her, "Look, how this looks. Look how this is. If we just answer to people about, oh, it's because of how it looks, right? No, you need to quantify information." And now my mother can understand, like, oh yeah, that's AI generated. It's not real. But we need to, continuously educate people and tell them, like, hey, AI can do this. AI can't do this. You don't have to worry about AI taking your job in this area. You're needlessly panicking. AI isn't capable of replacing you here. Or hey, this you need to be careful about this type of things, like getting a message on your phone. Something that I just recently read about is an example of a scam where people like me who put this sort of put their voice online because they have online tutorials and stuff, need to be careful because you can very easily create an AI model of my voice. You don't need a lot of, you need like an hour of recording to create like a basic AI voice, slap some noise on it or something so it's not as clear, and you can fake a call to my boss and tell him I'm quitting, or fake a call to you know my girlfriend and tell her like, hey, I'm stuck here. Quickly send me money to pay. I'm on a business trip. I got stuck. I need money. Please send me 1,000 euros on this bank account so I can retrieve it. Those are the kind of scams that happen today that we simply need to be aware of because again, it's much easier, it's much less of an impact if a person know something can happen and knowing it exists than falling a victim to it because they weren't aware of it. And that is something that can, and people are going to blame. If someone gets scammed using an AI tool, like I just described, a lot of people are going to be reacting to it negatively in terms of the tool they're using, blaming the or AI is instead of blaming the person who scammed them, or blaming themselves for falling victim to it. They're going to be like, oh, that AI is at fault because got I got scammed by AI. When in reality you got scammed by some guy somewhere or some woman somewhere, right? Okay, so as I mentioned, I don't want to just we talked about a lot of things here. I want to go over some examples of actual things, actual problems. As I mentioned here, about educating about AI capabilities, AI limitations. I want to give some examples of that. So I have a couple of examples of different biases and errors and issues that happened with AI. So I'm going to discuss that before we, finish this class. So, okay, so the first example that we have is, is the racial bias. The racial bias is extremely common, mostly because a lot of AI tools come from United States of America, where racial questions are very, very apparent. So one example is, Compass case. Compass was an AI tool that was developed for basically trying to figure out whether a person is going to reoffend or not after they have been arrested. Why is this a problem? Because well, the issue happens when do you want to if this person is going to reoffend? They made an error. Like if it was something that's not something that they aren't a career criminal. Maybe they, did something in anger or something. They aren't going to do it again. I'm not going to put them, throw them in prison for 10 years, right? I'm going to give them a lighter sentence because they're at risk of reoffending. And that was a tool that was widely used as an expert support tool for judges, where a judge can basically type in some data and see whether this person is likely to reoffend or not. If they are likely to, if they're released today, if they're likely to reoffend, we're going to, it's better to put them in prison. And I'm not going to go into discussion about prison systems and stuff, but yeah, but basically that's the direction we want to go to. So essentially, when they looked at errors, misclassification, this ProPublica company that analyzed, they realized that first they had, when it comes to misclassification, first, this error rate is horrifying. For an AI tool, a misqualification of 45, this is like 45% of black defendants versus were misclassified as high risk instead of being a low risk, versus 23% of white defendants. So there is a difference here in 22% or 20% when looking at the different type of error, like classifying high risk as low risk. White defendants were more likely. But just to have this type of error in an AI system, I'm telling you now, if my student here came to me for like their thesis with 23% error, they will be leaving my office very quickly, because it means that they messed something up very badly. This is the type of error you get in. You don't even need to email me because you made a massive error somewhere in your code. You didn't train your model for long enough or something. Like it's such a massive error that I would be ashamed to admit that a model I consider finished for academical purposes is erroring out this much. For reference, in engineering, the error that we are aiming for usually when we're talking about AI applications in engineering, we are usually aiming at 1%, right? And that's we are talking about the energy prediction in a robot or something like that, or the temperature prediction of a steam turbine. We aren't talking about human lives. So I'm just trying to illustrate to you how ridiculous this number is. Not even addressing this. This is even more horrible, to have a difference in errors between classes and not analyzing it, which is the analysis for running this today and years ago when I was a student, definitely when this was when this existed, the tools for that is like a single Python command is going to show you this, generate a confusion matrix. I don't know if you covered confusion matrices before in previous classes, but any AI engineer should figure out that this doesn't work and this should be solved. So like I'm trying to illustrate to you that this wasn't a light error. This wasn't something that was like oh whoops, it happened, I mistyped something. This was like we actively know that this company who released actively knew that their software is essentially coin flip and released it. So that's a massive issue at the time, and it still exists, especially because, when I talked about releasing data publicly, that's something that I get asked a lot. Like, hey, AI is your AI model. When I sell AI to people, and I want to get them like, hey, you want to, me to develop your model for something? They tell me, how do you know? You don't know how it works. You're using like a black box model. And I tell them, I don't know how it works based on the model. I know it works based on the errors it makes, right? Because how do you know your car works? Are you a mechanical engineer specializing in engines? You aren't. You know it works because you get in the car in the morning, you press a button, it starts, you drive to work, it doesn't explode anywhere on the way. You say like, oh, my car is in great working condition. Why? Because it doesn't produce an error, right? And that's how you classify AI models. It doesn't produce an error, and if it produces this type of an error, it's obviously not good. You shouldn't apply it. So that's something that personally irks me, that you would get something that's so important that is deciding whether someone is going to go to jail or not, and you would release it with this kind of an error. It's horrible. But there's more. So we have racial biases in healthcare algorithms. I mentioned this is something that was analyzed in U.S. hospitals, where AI algorithms were used for predicting whether you need extra care or not. Because some people don't need extra care. Don't need extra care, and this was observing historical data. The problem is that they used historical data that was racially biased, where black patients either left on their own because they didn't want to pay extra, because they were usually lower income, or were sent home more because there was, those decisions were possibly influenced racially by doctors making those decisions. And that indicated that black patients don't need additional healthcare in cases where white patients would get generated, would be told like, hey, you need to provide extra care for this person. And this isn't. I just want to. A lot of people go like, oh well, you can equate this. We're talking about a situation where you have two patients who are in equal situation. One is black, one is white, and the algorithm qualifies them differently. So the same type of disease, the same type of injury, the same age, same type of work they are doing. Yeah. So that's something that was found to essentially be a big problem in this AI algorithm that was used in healthcare. And I don't know how much you follow the news lately. I prepared this presentation before what happened, and I'm not going to discuss it in the lecture here. But recently a CEO of a healthcare insurance provider was killed. In part, the person who is suspected to be the killer was recently arrested, and essentially one of the points that he had like a manifesto, right? Was that essentially an AI algorithm was pushed by that CEO to make decisions, and that AI algorithm was known to make errors. So a very similar situation to this. It wasn't racially motivated in that case, but it was known faulty AI algorithm, like in this case, that was pushed by that CEO who was assassinated in New York recently. Again, I prepared this before that, so I wasn't directly referring to it. So just something to illustrate that how much of a hot topic uh, these types of issues are, not just racially biased, but generally, healthcare bias, where your care is decided by an AI algorithm. Uh, this is a relatively much more fun example than the previous two, and the ones I have following. So we have, I mean, funny. It obviously, it depends on your humor, but it always brings a smile to my face to see a massive company fail this badly. So we have a chatbot Tay that was launched in 2016 by Microsoft on Twitter, right? And I don't know if you were around to see this, but it was a spectacular failure. Essentially, they took a couple of hours to go. It was trained to basically learn from people, right? It was trained to learn from people, and obviously, what Microsoft did is that someone took data, on Twitter interactions, and they saw like some bad, they saw racist stuff in there, transphobic stuff, etc., and they eliminated it from the training data because we aren't going to teach our algorithm that kind of stuff. And then the algorithm was coded to learn stuff from other people online, and instead of this stuff being filtered because they used the proper training data, and they identifying this error and saying like, oh, if we're training to full training data, we get they being very racist. We're going to filter that out, programmatically, uh, outside of AI, or we are going to let they interact with this type of stuff so it doesn't learn from it. They cleaned the public data, filtered it, fed it to Tay, and when Tay started learning, it became a Nazi within a matter of hours. It was a spectacular failure. It was really great. This is how it started out. These are the initial tweets, and I can show you the tweets that happened afterwards. But they use some very very colorful language, and they show some very very not nice ideas. It was a massive chatbot failure that actually negatively influenced a lot of different. Even ChatGPT today, people were mentioning this kind of stuff. Like, oh, I'm afraid of using ChatGPT for, support, like LLMs for support. What if something like this happens? And it just goes to show, how big of an error this was. This is another example that was basically Lensa was an AI app that basically took your pictures. And it generated like a stylized avatar for you. It was pretty good because you can instead of getting like the idea was instead of getting your picture taken professionally, and paying for it, you can take a bunch of pictures, selfies that you take yourself or that you have on your social media that people took of you, feed it into this app and get like a nice professional looking avatar. So what happened was essentially that basically because of the data they use or something, there was a big difference between male presenting users who received professional avatars and female presenting users who received sexualized avatars. And one journalist essentially this happened to her. This is Miss Hikela who basically published these are the types of avatars that she received, where she's obviously in a lot of them she isn't wearing clothes, she's wearing very scant clothes, right? While men, the people who send their pictures, who the author decided, the lens app decided that they were a male, they were given like suits and again, astronauts, white coats, etc. So obviously the developers actually did fix this. Now I don't know if it has been discontinued since, but they have actually put active effort into fixing this issue, and they have fixed the issue. So it's not necessary to immediately witch hunt and ask for the shutdown. Things can be fixed, and developers don't always notice an error, right? But when something like this is happening, obviously that developers should, go and try to do something about it, to adjust their models or the training data or something, because there were obviously errors. And one of the issues here that was mentioned was that data was automatically collected, so it obviously wasn't filtered, and they were just wanted to get a lot of pictures in the training data to help support this, and they obviously, through their error, the methodology for collecting this data was not great, because they obviously introduced a certain bias based on gender to it. I talked a lot about hiring. Essentially, this iTutor group used AI to screen for job applications. Screening is a common step in job applications. A lot of developers work on stuff like that. It basically, you get a lot of job applications, a lot of them automatic. It's not easy. It's not hard to set up, like automatic forwarding of emails for different, to apply for different jobs, and that's something that you want to filter, not because you're evil and you don't want you don't want people to hire people. You want to essentially filter out people who are not qualified. If you are getting a job that strictly requires a diploma, you want to automatically check whether a person has a diploma or not and eliminate those who don't. The problem is that today you want to eliminate more and more people, because applying to jobs is much faster. And this is the job that was before. Back in the day, it was done. You walked into the front of the desk somewhere and told them, I'm trying to apply for a job. Here is my CV, and the person at the front desk would thank you, look at your CV, said like you don't have like a bachelor's degree, and just throw it away. Don't even send it to the boss. Today, it's much easier to apply en masse to different. So, job applications might get hundreds or thousands of applications, depending on how big they are. I've heard stories about like job openings in Google getting hundreds of thousands of applications. So you can have someone go through that, because a lot of these people aren't qualified, and nowhere near the level to be qualified to work a certain job. And how are you going to process all of that? Because people are sending it. Again, if you remember, in data storage and management, we talked about variety in data. Not everyone is sending the same CV, same type of CV. So AI is something that's commonly used to filter this. But the problem is that again, you want to check your work when you're working with AI. You want to have someone in the HR department who goes over the rejections and sees if something like this is happening, because this automatically, so it not only did have an age bias, which which is illegal, it also had a gender bias, right? So females over 55 and males over 60 were automatically excluded. Yeah, so not great. And this didn't matter, based on qualifications or experience. This is why that explainable AI is important today, why a lot of research is focusing on it, because you can look at the model that you trained and see that the first decision it makes is, are you over 55, 5, are you female? Yes, you are getting refused, and that's that's obviously something that you don't want to happen. You're going to immediately look at that model and be like, oh no, and retrain it, readjust the data, adjust the biases so it doesn't look at this variable, remove this variable from the data set that you're feeding to training because it's not necessary. Same goes like while you're even checking the age, you shouldn't. Maybe if it was checking something like if a person is over 65 or something, so they are in retiring age, but in a lot of countries, it is illegal to not hire someone just because of their age. So yeah, so that was something that cost the company this iTutor caused them a large settlement. $350,000 is what they had to pay. So that's something that it's those biases exist. This is bias that's a lot of people aren't going to hire people over 60, right? That's how it is. Sadly, I know that my mother lost her job when she was 55, and I know how much she struggled to find a job at that age. So I'm, acutely aware of this problem in biasing, this bias that exists, but you can't have an AI make that decision automatically because that's illegal, and it's illegal to discriminate with AI or without AI. But when people are I believe that there is a big difference when you are doing, you're doing something automatically turning down thousands of people because the problem is if everyone used this AI to screen for job applications, especially for something that's, it's a tutoring case where a person over 60, there is like a physical reason or anything that they couldn't be hired or they are less qualified for, tutoring people. On the contrary, someone with 6 years of experience might be even better at something like that. Uh, and if everyone used this kind of software, no one could get a job. Or this is why we need overview, why we need to check what's going on, and why we need to check errors. And again, this is a massive, massive error on the side of AI engineers because you can't just look at the score of your AI algorithm. You need to look at what kind of errors it makes. And this is something that I always tell my students. Don't just show up and be like, my algorithm has 99% accuracy. That's great. No, look at what are the cases where it made errors. Is there regularities in it? Your algorithm might be making a mistake in that specific area. Okay, I talked about AI, recognition, for criminals and so on, using facial recognition. There are a lot of examples. This one was pretty high profile one. It was talked about a lot. It was Robert Williams was wrongfully arrested in 2020 because facial recognition automatically identified him falsely as a person who does this, and the problem why this was, an issue. It was not only an issue because of the political situations that were going on in America in 2020, but it was also the problem because it led to an analysis of the algorithm used here, and it showed that the algorithm that was used for facial recognition was less accurate for darker skin tones, leading to higher misidentification risks because the data set that was used for the algorithm and the filtering that was applied to the images wasn't well adjusted to people with darker skin tones. So people who are from Latin America or African Americans in culturally. So this is an example of how biased AI can actually lead to significant problems with arrests, especially with stuff that was going on in America at that time. The protests and everything, and just generally a racially charged situation that can happen in discussion there. This was a big, big error by the people who were working on it, and that's something that again equitable AI systems, applying well for everyone. This is something that developers need to check, and if developers aren't checking them because they are, they're laser focused on something, they're laser focused on getting a higher precision rate. It's something that, if you are included in decision making because you are, a social scientist, or you're working at a company, this thing that you need to mention. If you're ever working with someone, if you are on the computer programmer, you're working with someone who is developing AI. Always focus on asking questions like this, like, okay, you're making an error. How are you making that error? What types of data are you making that error on? Is there any sort of regularity in there? Show us, a randomly sample certain percentage of data that you're making errors on and that you are classifying correctly. Let's see, if you randomly sample 5 images here and all 5 images that were misclassified were people, with darker skin color, you're obviously making an error. That might be pointing towards the fact that you're making an error based on your algorithm isn't great, and that's not necessarily a bad algorithm. That's what I tell people, is just limited application algorithm. You can't take this algorithm apply it to everyone. If it works great for people who have, in a certain group, apply it on them, develop a separate algorithm for people who in a different group, right? Don't just apply it on one group and not on the other, because that's also bias. One person, one type of people, one ethnical group or one age group or one gender is being classified with AI, the other isn't. That's obviously also an error. It's not necessarily okay. People might complain about that, but develop, separate algorithms. So that's something that's very commonly done research-wise, where you have, when you have initial separation and you have two or more different algorithms for different classes of elements. Like, for example, something that I worked on, which isn't this type of problem, was a vessel speed prediction. When you have a massive ship or something like that, it's very hard to predict the speed of it accurately. So depending on the conditions and the boat, and we found that it was very hard to predict, speed for different types of boats. So we just did three different models for different boat sizes. And that's something that you can do when you have a bias. That's something that you can try doing. You can break that bias apart manually and then apply different models to help address it. And this is the Mr. Williams is on here. This is the image that was from the camera that they transformed and identified him. And you can see that they are similar looking, but they obviously aren't the same person when you look at it, but with your eyes instead of an algorithm somewhere. So that's also something that the person who made the arrest should have maybe looked at this and been like, "Oh, this isn't the same person necessarily. It doesn't look. Let's approach this. Let's get some extra evidence, or let's." Or how is this picture being transformed? Is that maybe the reason? Because there are a lot of artifacts. Some questions should have been asked before an arrest was made based on just this, right? And the final example I have here is, oh no, it's not the final example. I have two more examples. One is, so basically, with DALL-E, if it was it was by OpenAI, software for generating images. Basically, if you try to generate an image of a disabled person leading a meeting, usually you couldn't get it. It was very, very hard to get a disabled person in position, on the head of the table. Let's call it that way. Where person was like actively presenting or something like that. That person is usually like a passive observer. And this isn't necessarily why am I including this example? That wasn't something that's introduced by AI. That's something that AI highlighted because obviously when DALL-E was collecting, how DALL-E was trained, it was essentially Google scrubbing. It will go to Google Images, collect the image and the title or description attached to that image, and it would use as metadata and would use that for training. And so the DALL-E in this case didn't decide that disabled person can be leading a meeting. It just didn't get a lot of training data, including that or any at all. So it's not an error that's caused by AI. It's an error that's caused by the type of data that was used in training that AI. So AI can be used to like emphasize what's going on. Hey, this is the issue. We need to, this is a stereotype that exists that is obviously shown in the data that we have, and we need to, fix that not at a DALL-E level, at an AI generation level, but we need to fix it, societally, and we need to, emphasize, when it comes to data, what can we do? We need to do, maybe automatically scraping stuff isn't great. We need to see what are the issues and focus on that. And the final example that I have, is credit scoring systems. Basically, what FICO has, it's basically it's a tool for if you want to get a loan, you will get your credit score. That's something that's used pretty openly in United States, for example, but in Europe, it's also the similar systems are used to determine your scores. Your a certain sort of score, if it's below this, you're going to get not get a loan. If it's above this, you're going to get a loan. That's essentially how it works. Every bank has this, and if you're ever taking a loan on anything, if you're ever applying for a credit card, it's probably getting decided by an AI system these days. But basically, someone, because these scores are they aren't necessarily public, but they are accessible. Because you can, instead of calculating your own. So basically, if you go to a bank today, at least in Croatia, as far as I'm aware, they're going to use their own algorithm. This is why you might get a loan in one bank, but not get it in the other. That happened to a friend of mine. He was applying for a loan, and he got refused in one bank, but accepted in the other bank because of the amount of money. But despite being, the same person, they each used their own system to determine whether he can apply for a loan or not. So essentially, what happened here? Why is it an interesting case? Is basically in USA they have a FICO system which centralizes this. There are a couple of different systems, but FICO is one of them, and they basically calculate credit score for people, centrally. So I can just, if I'm trying to give you a loan for a car, for example, I can just check the FICO system, and it's going to give me a score for you. And if it's lower than what I want, I won't give you. I won't give you, certain. I won't give you that loan or whatever we are talking about here. So what happened here is that the approvals interest rates reflected this because white applicants had a much higher score, 57 points. The highest score you can have is 900, so 57 points isn't insignificant. And 33 points, higher than Hispanic applicants. What happened here is that generally, what happened here is that FICO said, well, we aren't introducing, like race isn't an element that we are introducing here, right? Our AI system doesn't use data, doesn't use race data. It's not fed everywhere. It uses age, it uses gender, but we aren't using race. That's what they said when this story broke. And what essentially happened here is that, sometimes, the AI systems use proxies that indicate race. This wasn't the case in FICO. This is what some people assumed, like, oh, you aren't showing the race, but you are maybe indicating, based on where they are living or something like that, whether that person is, which race they are. FICO told them that, no, this isn't the case. We aren't using anything. So what happened when the analysis was further performed was that much more black individuals had lower scores in general than white individuals because they were less credit. Had generally lower credit scores because they had lower income or stuff like that, right? And the question that was raised here is essentially like, hey, basically just because there are more people who are of certain race who have lower credit scores, does that mean that we should automatically judge people because we are introducing that to different proxies and etc. When it's not necessarily bad. So here's one example. In Croatia is famous for having, when we discuss, in the media, we have a lot of gray economy, right? So gray economy means that it's not illegal. No one's, we're not talking about dealing drugs, but we are talking about under the table, like I'm going to, clean an apartment. I'm not going to do it within the tax system that we have. We're going to do it under the table. You're going to pay me for, some maintenance in your apartment or something like that. Croatia has a massive problem with this gray economy, so to speak. And essentially, that's a part of a possible problem that a lot of, for example, older people might have a lot of income that falls outside of the tax system. And so, for example, someone who is working a lot in the gray economy, right, might be better off than me, when I'm working, I'm working at a university or something. While this person is, I don't know, uh, they are a car mechanic, and when they are done with their job, they go like fix cars on the side. Is the term that we use colloquially, and they might have a much higher income than me. But if they are applying for a loan somewhere, and they are much more likely to return that loan because they are earning much more money and they are uh, actually a much more qualified person to give that loan out to because they have diversified sources of income. I'm much more likely to get the loan because I get paid better as working at a university than they are as a mechanic on paper, but in reality, I'm a much worse candidate for that. So that's sort of an example that you can have why this wasn't the best model, and there are better models such as cash flow analysis that generally do exist, to address these types of issues. Uh, yeah, so that's generally a problem. The reason why I included this is that is basically these proxies. A lot of data, we will think AI is very, very capable, and AI can figure out stuff about gender or something that's introduced by a proxy, which is basically an information that's like we don't figure out it correlates with race or gender or age, right? So we may not be typing in, this is a very dumb example, but you can say like, well, I don't have age in my data set, but you have a date of birth, and AI is smart enough to figure that out. So that's just like a very, very simple example, but you can have much more complex examples where, you're essentially encoding certain data in, as an input to an AI or something. Yeah. Okay. So that's it for the examples. So let me just cover this seminar. So as I said at the start of the class, and don't worry, I'm going to send you this in an email as well. So first of all, if you haven't received an email today from me with this, with information, with the link to the class, etc., please, I'm writing my email in the chat here. I'm not writing it publicly. I don't want it on necessarily available on YouTube. So I just passed it in chat my email. Right. If you haven't received an email from me, just write me an email and tell me like, hey, I haven't. Please try to do it as soon as possible today, because once this video is uploaded, I'm going to send everyone more, in writing details on the seminar, so we can all, have it on the same page. To complete this class, to pass this class, you need to write this short seminar, 5 to 10 pages. Feel free to use ChatGPT. That's not, if you want to fill out. If you submit a well-written 2-page essay, it's fine. You don't have to try to meet, 5 pages exactly. Just a guideline here. And what I want you to do here is to choose an example, whether it's whether you Google it, find a real world example if you want to, or you can come up with a possible example, maybe from an area that you are more familiar with, to basically write this to write about. And what I want you to basically cover in your paper, what I expect you to cover in your paper is to go over what type of a bias is it? What's going on? Why is there a bias here? Why is there an error here? The second, which I'm pointedly including, is like which groups are vulnerable by it. I'm pointedly including this because this course is EU funded, and generally, if you're ever going to be applying to EU funded projects, or depending on where you're from, government funded projects, identifying vulnerable groups are something that you're going to have to do. So you can think of this as a bit of an exercise, right? And you can talk about like what is the cause of this bias. So, for example, if you find an example like this, you're going to say like the bias is caused by data that was there. It influenced people of different races. And it was caused because people didn't properly check the data that was sourced. What should have been done? The data set should have been made bigger, or we should have, checked the data additionally, etc. Basically, based on this lecture, the slides that we discussed, you can just write, short. Again, 5 to 10 pages is just a guideline, right? It's not. If you send me a 3-page seminar, I'm not going to fail you. If you need support for ideas, feel free to use AI generation. I'm not an anti-AI generation because I just want you to, the goal of this is for you to sit down and think about an example, or learn about an example that exists. So if you need help generating text, go ahead. So yeah, so that's the seminar. That's why you have just a shorter lecture here. You need to send me the seminar by so the class is end at 20th. I would ask you to please send it to me by 18th of December. I will write this in chat and both in the email I send you. I'm going to send you this email, with all the details. Uh, Today after I'm done uploading this video, so I can include the video in the email. So that's it. Again, you will just send it to me to the email. You can just reply or something, and that's it. You generally don't need to worry. The idea isn't I'm not really going to fail you or something like that. And feel free to it's staying private is just for me, so it's not going to get published or discussed or sent anywhere. So you can feel free to express your opinion or anything, even if you consider that opinion to be unpopular. I don't mind. Go ahead, write about whatever you want in there. Again, as long as I just want you to try to check and understand that a certain biases do exist here. Okay. That's it. Does anyone have any questions regarding this or anything regarding the class? Okay, no one's picking up, so I assume you do not. Okay, not a problem. Then I will basically email you this, and that's it for today. If you figure out you have some sort of a question or you want to ask something later on, feel free to email me at the email I wrote here. Okay, and if anyone is like watching this on YouTube and they don't have access to my email, you can just write to that Erasmus Gmail that we use to contact you, and I'm in charge of that account, so I will just send you my personal email to deliver this seminar to me. Okay. Okay, thank you everyone and for listening to me and goodbye for today.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you for the lecture. Goodbye.